Whenever it comes to building buy-in with an athlete, it starts with the person first, not anything else that comes along with that. It starts with the person. Whenever we're collecting data and things of that nature, in my initial evaluation process, I start with the person. I start with asking them questions about who they are, how they are, what's their mindset, what type of situations drive them, whether they're a service mindset or something of that nature, right? I try to figure out exactly who they are and how they are. I also try to figure out what level they're at whenever it comes to buy in. Are they in a resistant stage, in a reluctant stage, a compliant, committed, or a compelled stage? Meeting an athlete where they're at starts with who they are as a person, right? So if we figure out what level they're at, then we can figure out the best means to get them to where they're more committed and compelled. If we get them there, then their belief is going to go up, their confidence is going to go up, all the above intangibles that we talk about, soft skills, whatever, then those are going to go up. If those go up, then those are going to allow for better results long term. As we get those results long term, then I still believe that there's better ways to program than others. Obviously, we know if we walk into a gym, we see 15 exercises, 4 sets of 20 reps, right? That's bad programming. And so there's better ways to go about doing things than others. As a, to get an athlete from reluctant or compliant to compelled, it's going to be different for different people. And what do I mean by that? It starts with why, right? It starts with why are they here? Why are they doing what they do? Why do they play their sport? Why they are who they are? After we figure that out and we figure out that interpersonal thing, well, then we can start to figure out how and what to get those people to where they are starting to be more compelled to do what we're trying to get them to do, whatever that may be. If they don't have a love for it, there are actually quite a few people that don't really love what they have going on, but still perform at a very high level. Well, how can we make it to where they do love it? How can we make it to where they do want to be here, be committed, be compelled to have others come along with them? The why starts there, then the what and whatnot, right? And so what I mean by the how and the what, whenever it comes to building trust, that's one of the pillars to success. It's trust, right? And so what I like to do is I try to figure out where at on this they are. Do they I understand we all have that saying of no one cares what you know until they know you care. I've had some athletes where they don't care about that at all, right? They more care about what my competence level is, what my character is like, how much commitment do I have? Am I showing them consistency? Am I willing to put in work like they are? Am I willing to lead by example, right? I have athletes come to me all the time, and don't get me wrong, I definitely care, and I care a lot. I may show that in different ways, but I definitely care a lot, right? And so if I have an athlete where they more care about my competence, well, I got to meet them there. And so I got to start going more into detail about stuff. And by showing them my competence, they see that I care. By showing them my competence, they see that I have consistency, that I have commitment, that I have character in different ways, right? Then they start to, know me a little bit better. They start to see who I am, how I am, blah, blah, blah. And then that's whenever they start to see my character, right? And so all of that leads to building trust, which leads to the most important thing, which is a connection, the connection with the human being in front of us. How can we build that? Again, I just went over a bunch of things that we can do to build that connection, and then just be someone that they want to be around, right? Now obviously, as we go through this process, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm gonna be, depending on who you are, your friend, but it's about a lot. There's a lot more going on than just that, right? And so, how can I get the most out of you? Well, sometimes, pushing you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable is going to get that. Guess what? It's going to build that connection more. You want to first start with, showing them that you care, character, consistency, commitment, competence, and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, sometimes, that connection can come from you just having a normal conversation with them. You just treating them like the person that they are, and then starting to go ahead and add in all the other variables that come along with that. So like once we build that connection, then I can start to dive more deeply into a lot of, my coaching philosophy, where we can start to think about progressive overload. We can start to think about, the different durabilities necessary, preparation, individualization, specificity, right? We can start to dig into all of these things so that way they can start to see, what my process is and what they can do and inherit to help get a PhD in their own process. I'm constantly challenging the athletes, constantly asking them questions, constantly making them think for themselves. Instead of teaching them how to think, I sit here and I show them, I'll ask them questions so that way they will critically, analyze things for themselves. A lot of the times I want them to develop their own answer, wherever that may be. Whenever it comes to coaching cues, yeah, I have coaching cues that, especially with lower level athletes, that I'll tell them and whatnot. But whenever they start to level up, I try to get them involved with their own coaching cues. I try to get them involved with everything that's going on so that way they develop a PhD in their own process. If they're able to coach themselves, that's what's going to lead to championships more so than anything else. The best teams win from within and lose from within. So we always want to keep that at the forefront. And I understand that it's not all about winning, but process equals outcome, right? I understand that we want to focus on the process, but your process is still going to equal an outcome. So by getting a PhD in your own process, that's going to help lead to outcomes that you're wanting, right? I really like how what's his name? I forget his name right now, but he described it goes intent, execution, outcome, right? So whenever we have the intent for something, right? Let's say we have the intent of individualization. Well, how we execute that intent is really going to tell us what's going to happen, right? Whenever it comes to the execution portion, that's what's more important. We want to have the intent towards everything that we got going on, whether, that be equality, creativity, open-mindedness, right? All of these different things. But we can say this and still not execute at that level. We can say that we're doing all of these things like my coaching philosophy, but then and have the intent towards these things, but then whenever it comes to execution, that's not what's really happening. So how can we make it to where they are focusing on that execution to get a PhD in their own process? Again, I like to ask questions. I like to make them involved with the cues that they come up with. I like to make them involved with, certain aspects of decision making. Whenever we set boundaries or constraints on an athlete, I still allow them to explore creativity within those constraints. I don't really necessarily like to just sit here and tell everybody, hey, do this. If this, then that, right? Now, in certain situations, that's a really good one. But in a lot of other situations, that starts to, take away from creativity and them finding their own solutions to problems. We always want to take that into account. We want to take the individual into account as we go forward because that's what's going to help them be more successful. If we look at setting up practice, right, we have variable practice and fixed practice. Fixed practice, the athletes do good in that practice, right? They know what's coming, they know how to react to it. If this, then that, right? But we see that variable practice is actually what translates to the game more by allowing that variability and allowing them to go ahead and solve problems in real time. That's what's going to help them going forward because that's what's happening in game demands, right? It, I just had to put for the 23 right here, win, right? Like it's not all about wins and losses, but obviously at the end of the day, we're trying to win. Process equals your outcome. Get a PhD in your process. Become 5D.